Where are you
Yeah.
originally from?
Well, I was born here, but just barely. My parents emigrated from England after the war. My mom was born in Edinburgh, but grew up in Liverpool, and my dad was Welsh.
Oh wow! Because your accent when we first started the call, I was like, am I getting this right? It was like it felt so English. It was fantastic.
I know, I still do, and now probably talking to you, it'll come out even more.
Yeah, maybe even a little
Yeah,
bit of that Liverpool scouse will come out as well. So,
yeah, it
uh,
will. It will.
yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
So
My mom never lost that accent.
to me, it's such a, especially when someone from Liverpool's angry, you can barely understand them. So, but yeah, Lynn,
Well, she
Lynn.
just always say, "Go
So,
ahead."
but yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being on the Creative Connection podcast. Um, I just want to tell you a little bit how it kind of started. I founded the Hellbound Horror Festival 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. Wow! And we had Alex Proyas and Joe Alves, the production designer of Jaws and Close Encounters, as a judge. And through that process, I met Doug from S.I.C.K. And yeah, we wanted to start something together. And I'm interviewing filmmakers, creative artists, all sorts of people. So I thought S.I.C.K was a great place to start. But Lynne Griffin, thank you so much for doing this. Are you excited about?
Oh, you're most welcome.
Are you excited about being part of S.I.C this year?
Yes, although I'm trying to get well. Haha,
Yeah.
it's a joke. No, well, yes. I mean, I have an issue at the moment that we're trying to get past. I don't know if you've
Okay.
ever heard of vertigo. But
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
I
But
have
yes,
some of
I'm
that.
looking forward to Stick
Yeah.
or
Um.
the Sudbury Indie Creature Kon.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I the term sick now is just like a positive thing as well, which is
Oh
great.
yeah,
So I
it
think
means
that
it's yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm of the generation slightly older than that, so it doesn't really sit. It's not the same for me. So, um,
Now, some of us
uh,
who are older than that still consider sick illness. But I
yeah,
like it. It's great. I think it's a really catchy name
absolutely. Yeah, it really is. It
or
really is.
acronym.
And yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, so I wanted to ask you, how did you? Because this is my favorite kind of question to ask filmmakers and artists, and especially people involved in the film industry and horror. What's your kind of first memory of cinema, or who was it in your family that introduced you to film generally?
Wow. Well, my dad, James Joseph Griffin, was a professional photographer, a high fashion photographer, and he used me as like a baby. I was in some of his ads, and I was he actually photographed me. I was on the cover of my fourth grade speller, which was very embarrassing.
Yeah.
So I think it's funny because I was brought up in a very British household. I wasn't allowed too much television. So I probably watched, I mean, earliest would have been probably the Bugs Bunny show but my dad always let us watch the Mitch Miller Hour. I don't know if you even know what that is.
No.
A musician who had I think he played the trumpet. It was crazy. Anyway, we got to watch that every Sunday, and we got to watch the Ed Sullivan show. But as far as film, I'm trying to think what my first one. It might have been something like 101 Dalmatians. It was most likely Disney, so not horror. um,
Yeah.
but I do remember this as a child. The horror film that I do remember that I must have watched many times as a child that scared me. One was the werewolf, where the man all of a sudden it's the old fashioned one where all of a sudden his face gets hairy.
Was it like a
Scared
Lon
me.
Chaney one? The Lon Chaney
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
love
then the
love.
other one was
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, the other one was called The Time Machine. And in it, there's a moment, and I guess that's H.G. Wells. Anyway, I can't remember the actor, but there's a moment when he's
Rod
on the
Taylor.
time.
Is it
Yes,
Rod
Rod
Taylor?
Taylor.
Yeah, I love the
And
film.
when
Yeah,
he goes, either is he going back in time really fast, and his whole body sort of disintegrates.
yeah.
Um,
Isn't it
so,
amazing when you look at something like that,
mm,
or say for me it was there's elements in films that aren't necessarily horror. Like, um, this is completely random. My wife and I, we do this thing called alphabet cinema. So when we watch a movie, we both pick a film, and it starts with A, then B, then C. So
oh,
it's a really nice way to
yeah,
find new films as well, older films that are new, and I like a mix of everything. And we watched. Oh
I
my
just
god, I
fell
forgot my
down.
point now. We were watching
So you were doing,
Octopussy. So we were on O, and I said, "Do you fancy watching a Bond film?" And I thought, I know, it's not. We want to, do small indie things and all of that. Um, and when we watched Octopussy, it reminded me of the opening scene where there's a clown with a balloon, and he's got the Fabergé egg, and he stumbles through this window. And it is. I remember being a child and being horrified by that, and it's kind of darkly. It's really sinister. So there's moments in film that
yeah.
aren't necessarily strictly horror that kind of stay with you quite a lot. But yeah,
Well,
as you're
and
saying,
there.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I was just saying there are people who are deathly afraid of clowns. Why the It franchise has done so well.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's kind of an iconic look, isn't it? It's like Freddy Krueger and
Yeah,
Jason Voorhees and everything like that. So,
yeah.
um, but
Mm,
yeah, and
yeah.
what you're saying about
I'm not.
101
I'm not.
do you have pets?
Oh,
Have you got
you want to
dogs
see
or
one of
cats
them
or?
who won't leave me
Yes, please.
alone? This is Willie. Willie.
Oh, hello, Willie.
Whenever I do one of these, well, whenever I actually sit on the sofa, Willie, behave yourself. Whenever I sit on the sofa, he's on my lap, so he's here for the duration.
Yeah, that's
And then I
that's
have two
fantastic.
others. I have a Maine Coon named Larry, who is now 17 years old, and I have what I'm calling my pandemic kitty, who we got right before the pandemic hit, and so
Yeah.
he doesn't know anyone else but the two of us. He's very scared of anyone else, but he's a ginger kitty, and his name is Tomas.
Oh, fantastic. The reason I
And they all
mention
get
that
along.
is the reason I mention that is I've got a little dog called Frida after the artist Frida Kahlo,
Oh,
and what you
now you
what you were
know that.
saying, yeah.
You know that Frida. I'm also a visual artist, so Frida Kahlo is my muse. I've done at least maybe 60 to 75 portraits using her images.
Wow, that's incredible.
So
And
say hi
have
to
you?
Frida.
I will. She'll be in here. You'll see the door open like a horror film, and then she'll creep. And she's only about this big. So, and what you were saying
Okay.
about your earliest cinema memory, possibly being 101 Dalmatians, that
Yeah,
is so true.
Disney.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
scene where all the dogs are talking in London and they're passing the
Mm-hmm.
message on. It's so true because I live on
Mm-hmm.
an army base. I'm not in the army or anything like that, but as part of the army, there's private housing on the grounds, that kind of thing. And as soon as Frida barks, it's like a chain reaction. It's like a chain reaction. So they're all talking. Yeah, it's just like that scene. It's so accurate. It's so true. Um,
Oh, yeah. So
so
they don't need like walkie talkies. They just have barky barkies.
yeah, and when you've got headphones on and a microphone, and she barks near you, it just spikes. It just spikes. What? How did you go from enjoying cinema and with your upbringing where you've been brought up? How did you kind of get into acting and performance?
Oh, through the theater. I do know the first thing that I saw that on stage that my mom took me to was a performance that starred Laurence Olivier at the Royal Alexandra Theatre in Toronto. So
Wow.
my love of all this grew through theater. And when I was growing up, I guess my greatest wish was to do plays, which I wanted to do, and I literally, while I lived in Toronto, from the time I'm trying to remember, I think the first play I ever did was, oh my God, um, well, I did The Importance of Being Earnest, and I did The Skin of My Teeth, The Skin of Our Teeth as well, in an amateur production. I also was in an amateur production of a very funny play called Boeing Boeing with my mom, who played the maid, and I played the French airline hostess. I must have been, maybe about 14. I didn't even know, what was going on in this play at all, that this man has sort of revolving lovers coming through his apartment, and they're all airline stewardesses. I don't know.
Yeah.
So those are my first kind of theater experiences early on. And then I did a very seminal play, a Canadian play called Leaving Home by David French, who was very well known here in Canada. And that play went on for years. We toured it. We did a television version of it. Those people in that play were like my actual family for so long in my life. And because my dad died when I was 13, the man in the play, the man who played the father's name was Sean Sullivan. And now I am actually married to an actor named Sean Sullivan. Not that one, but yet another one.
Yeah.
A younger and more virile.
Sean was in Sean was in Biff Tannen's gang, wasn't he, in Back to the Future 3? Is that right?
Yes, Sean was. That's right. That's right.
Amazing.
He was, and he was doing Umbrella Academy.
Wow, incredible!
Yeah,
Absolutely incredible.
but the old Sean Sullivan you can find in 2001, A Space Odyssey. And it's funny because occasionally through the Screen Actors Guild, my new Sean, will get this little teeny check of a residual. And we go, well, we know, my dear older Sean Sullivan has passed away a long time ago. So if it's, I don't know, 35 cents, we just keep the check. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a great story. I love that. Something I wanted to, and obviously we'll touch upon, the seminal classic horrors you've been in, and Black Christmas for me is it's in that select group of films I watch every Halloween, with Poltergeist and Fright Night, and
Right.
I'm a sucker for 80s and 70s as well. But with your work on stage, and you're saying you had that kind of acting family, that group, is that something that translates well to film? Because obviously it's possibly is it a longer period you'd shoot a horror film for, or what's that kind of camaraderie like on stage compared to film?
Well, this is a very interesting question, because when I was cast in, when I was cast in Black Christmas, it was just a regular audition, except I think I won the part because I told them I was a good swimmer and I could hold my breath for a long time. But at that time, I was actually working at the Stratford Shakespearean Festival in Stratford, Ontario. I think I might have been playing Cordelia. I don't remember, but I mean, it's funny because I was kind of plucked from this very prestigious theater world and family into a horror movie with what I considered very prestigious people because of Olivia Hussey. Being able to work with Olivia Hussey for me at that time, when I was playing Shakespeare at Stratford, and I got to meet Olivia Hussey, who was Franco Zeffirelli's Juliet. That was pretty wonderful for me, and she was very forthcoming about talking about Zeffirelli and the experience of working on the film, and um, that really just inspired me. That that there everything is so interconnected as actors. Although sometimes you get pigeonholed as a television actor or a film actor or a theater actor, but or even a voiceover actor. But basically. We're up for anything and any kind of employment that we can get. Um, and I had actually preferred theater for the longest time, but once I sort of got a taste of what a film family was like, and Black Christmas was really a wonderful example because Bob Clark, well, Uncle Bob, I called him anyway, but made the whole experience just like a big Christmas party. So even though we were doing things that were sort of horrendous and violent and but not a lot of blood, um, it was very fun. Like putting a plastic bag over your head and trying not to breathe was fun, and he made it fun. And he sat opposite me when I
Yeah.
was in the rocking chair stuck in the attic with him for I don't know how many days it took to shoot it, and he had his foot on the rocker and was rocking me, and he threw the cat at me, Claude, the very diva cat. So the atmosphere, if a film shoot goes on a little longer time and you're involved in it, um, I think you do sort of create the same kind of family that you do as in a theater family. Although, theater gigs, you're usually housed somewhere where you're all living together. So, you're cooking meals together and sharing meals. And obviously that doesn't happen on a film set. But you do
Yeah.
get very close to those people and they become like a family.
That's great to hear. And what was the kind of the cast? What was the kind of average age of that cast?
Um, I think they
So
were
was
all just slightly older than me. I think, at that time, um, I got cast a lot as sort of the tragic virgin or ingenue.
yeah.
Because Margot was slightly older. I think Olivia was slightly older. Andrea Martin might have been about the same age. I mean, I felt young
Yeah.
compared to most of those women, and sort of a bit green as far as um, filmmaking. I mean, I'd been in front of a camera a lot, but not particularly as a dramatic actress. I was more used to an audience being present than a camera lens being in your face.
That's it. That's really interesting to hear because I think camaraderie, no matter if you're behind the camera, in front of the camera, is kind of really important, especially levels of trust. And with having a director that wants to make the right kind of impression, you hear stories of Richard Donner, who directed The Goonies, of
Mhm.
creating a great fun atmosphere for the kids,
Right.
and you've got to like Spielberg with E.T. and horror,
Yes.
and especially in horror now, I think it's important to have that, and some of it's lost because everyone's got their own kind of online lives, or you got to market yourself this way, and you don't hear a great number of stories of camaraderie. There probably is still instances of that happening, um, but obviously there's so much to do. There's so
Yes,
much kind of
there
extra
are.
stuff, you know.
I think it always, the quality of a project seems to always sort of stem from the head down. And if you have a really wonderful director who makes being on the set, a jolly experience for everyone involved, crew, catering, wardrobe, all the way down, you certainly feel it. And if there is any animosity, you certainly feel that, which, certainly segues into the story about the other movie, Curtains, which
Hmm.
did, have some troubles and animosity during, not that I was particularly aware of it, but it was there. And I think it does make a difference. And eventually it almost makes a difference in the finished product, I think. That you kind of can tell when you watch a film if there's been just gorgeous chemistry happening between the actors. It usually means the director was a really good and easy and empathetic person to work under and not a tyrant. There's a lot of tyrants in theater directors, but not so much I find in film. I think because in theater you are, it's their way or the highway.
Yeah. Like like you were saying, the chemistry, and it just reminded me of something when you mentioned your husband Sean, that the chemistry between Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd is one of the greatest kind of pairings in film.
Yes.
And when you see that, or you're part of a group of people, it's an incredible thing. And you hear stories of people having an amazing experience. Like I watched an interview with Rob Lowe about St. Elmo's Fire, and he's talking about the camaraderie on set during the production, and how it's like he was kind of melancholy, a bit melancholy about it because it was such a wonderful experience. But it's really fascinating to hear. And something, because you mentioned working in theatre, and I was kind of looking at a little bit of that. How difficult was it, or what was it like for you to go from stage to in front of a single camera? And were there things you were bringing over that didn't work for filmmakers, or how did it kind of differ for you for preparation?
Yeah, I learned a lot, because on stage you can be and probably are meant to be, particularly if you're in a huge theater like the Stratford Festival is, I don't know, 3,000 seats or whatever. If it's you're allowed to be large, grandiose in some way. When you get that in front of a camera, I really learned there's none of that. And even to this day, I mean, I have a director who always looks at me and says, well, there's the mug. Like he puts like a handle like this. There's the mug. There's the mug again. There's the mug. So you have to really, rather than being really expressive about whatever you're saying, you have to think it as opposed, and then it comes out. But I also had to learn, I had, with my eyes, it's very peculiar. Sometimes if you're having a very intense conversation, you don't know it, of course, but the person that you're looking at, your eyes are checking out both of their eyes like this. And that doesn't work on film. It looks like, it looks like you're having vertigo, which I just had. So, and I remember reading in Michael Caine's book, God bless, what very, very, very good reading for actors, Michael Caine, that always just focus on one eye. And if they're doing a close-up on you, focus with the eye that's open to the camera, right? So you're not, your eyes aren't going back and forth, and also your face is open to the camera. So I learned to be much more still. It's interesting too, because initially I didn't think I had a strong enough voice for the stage, but over the years I really developed that, obviously. And then going back into film, it's taking it all back down to being really right there. And your eyes are so important. And you look at some actors that you really appreciate, you'll see how still they are, how still their faces are in film. Because the slightest little thing gets exaggerated.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I hadn't seen it for such a long time, but in Strange Brew, did you notice that with other actors, or how they performed, and were there any kind of things that other actors would do? Like that Michael Caine moment in that book that you go, oh wow, that's such a that's such an interesting kind of thing to do, and you can through osmosis you'll kind of take that on board when you next perform.
Yes.
Or
well,
yeah.
and,
So
in theater.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, but
I was just going to say, in theater you can act like 360 degrees. In film, you're very specifically trying to hit a very clear mark on the floor, and the eye line has to be a certain direction. You can't, cross the eye line. So, I mean, there's lots of little technical things that come with learning how to act on film that, I learned in the School of Hard Knocks, I guess you say, by trial and error. But I mean, it is a very different style of working. And I think there are, I know there are people who teach film acting, but I think it's kind of something that you have to really examine yourself and watch a lot of film, watch some of your favorite actors. Spencer Tracy is a really good example, because if you notice, they say that he was never really able to find his mark if he was talking. So you notice when he first starts walking in a scene, he'll look down and then he'll look up. So he's looking for his mark. That's the apocryphal story, anyway. I don't know if that's absolutely true.
That's incredible. I'm gonna start next time I watch one of his films, because I love the Maltese Falcon. I love Nosferatu. I love Breakfast Club. I love all cinema, really. So next time I see something with him in, I'm gonna look for that.
Yeah, just look and see if you notice him sort of starting off the scene, and then he'll once he's gotten to his mark, he'll look up and he'll start acting.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it's a very good trick, because usually, everything is marked on the floor for you, but when they actually come to shoot it, they take up the marks or the sandbags. I think he probably had some sandbags, though, too, that they put at your feet so that you'll stop at a certain point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
that's funny that the tricks you learn.
That's so true. There was an actor. He played the Chatterer in the first Hellraiser film, the original Clive Barker film, and he was telling me that when he had his full prosthetic, it was just like chattering teeth, and it was this kind of demon, Cenobite, and he was telling me that if he didn't have marks on the floor and he couldn't see anything, because all he could do is look down like that. He was looking down because the makeup was so heavy.
Right, no peripheral vision.
Exactly, yeah. So if he didn't have that, he'd be screwed. He'd be injured, So that's fascinating to hear that Spencer Tracy would do that. But yeah,
it's funny too, because Sean did my Sean did a movie called The Howling, where he played an alligator boy. It was set in whatever the kind of carnival where there's a freak show. But in order for, they literally shaved his whole body, and then he had to wear something that pulled his lip like this and attached to back behind his ear, so that he had a funny sort of speech. I mean, what actors go through when you think of the actor who was in the Shape of Water, and he's in reptilian costume. It takes hours and hours to apply that kind of makeup.
Exactly.
Sometimes
Malcolm
6
McDowell
to 10 hours.
Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange with the eyes.
It was like that. It's only on one side. Only one side.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
crazy thing. Now, I just going to ask you, Alexander, because I was going to say one of my other favorite people in cinema is Alfred Hitchcock, and mainly because of the psychological terror, as opposed to what we now see as a lot of blood and gore.
Yeah, I'm not surrounded by his stuff, but I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. In the UK, in I'd say the mid-90s, they had a series of VHS tapes, and the first Hitchcock film I ever watched was The Lady Vanishes. And what I loved about this particular series, how they do re-releases, but this series of early Hitchcock British films, they had a presentation at the beginning from Tony Curtis, and I love Tony Curtis. And he had his leather gloves. He looked like the Boston Strangler, which he was. And my wife and I just finished watching The Persuaders. But yeah, Hitchcock is one of my favorites. And with Vertigo, I absolutely have it. I have moments where I just can't move, and it's awful. It really is awful.
Do you?
Yeah. Oh,
what do you do about it?
I can get it from going up a ladder or a few steps.
To me a week ago. Pardon?
I have to go on short walks. That's the trick for me. Movement.
Did you have to do that exercise where you lie down with a towel behind your shoulders and you're turning your head? And the room starts spinning like that. See, I've been dealing with this now for the last week. I had to drop out of a film because of it, because I just went, I can't go running through bog and woods chasing after young women with a machete when I have vertigo. Although that would have been fun.
You've got to be so careful of stairs and having a fall. That's the biggest thing. Yeah. The first time I ever had it, I just got out of bed. I literally just sat up, and it was as though someone had just put me in a laundrette machine. That's what it felt like. It was like wow, wow, wow. And I said to my my partner, I said to my partner at the time, and she's now my wife Vicky, and she just said, just lie in bed, just stay in bed, don't move. And it was horrific. I didn't drink the night before. It wasn't anything like that. Yeah. And it was terrifying.
And it just comes on, and you don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got to be very careful with that.
The first time that we did the exercise, I guess, we were trying to figure out, because they were saying, should you do the exercise to your left side or your right side? Anyway, we did my left, and I didn't see so bad. Then we did my right. Then I turned my head, and I was lying on the bed with the thing under my shoulders. But Sean said my eyes were going rapidly back and forth. They were open, but almost like REM sleep, but doing that. And I said, oh, you should have filmed it. It would have been good in a horror movie.
Wow. I have to tell you, I think you'll appreciate this story, because I can sense the British sensibilities in you, especially with horror and telling someone that a funny story will terrify others. Once, arachnophobia with the slippers and the spiders in the slippers and in the popcorn.
Oh yeah.
I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks before the Vertigo. I woke up choking on a spider. I literally was choking on a spider.
Real spider?
Yeah. The spiders in Toronto, in Canada and US are way different. Ours are tiny little thin things, but I woke up choking on a spider. I felt it and literally pulled it from my mouth. It was so terrifying. It was so terrifying. Yeah. So
but they say that's true. They say spiders do. Like if you're sleeping, maybe your mouth is open, that they do crawl into your mouth. Yeah. They say that the thought of it is perishing.
My palms are sweating now.
Yeah.
But I've
always said, go ahead.
No, I was gonna. Sorry, I didn't want to
do one of those films where they say, okay, so the spider's just gonna crawl up, and he's trained. He's rather large. He's a tarantula, but he's just gonna crawl up the side of your head like that. You just try to stay still. You're like, oh, please don't make me have to do that.
I think,
or snakes.
Do you remember that scene from Dr. No? It's my favourite Bond movie. Dr. No, where the spider and it's on his face. I swear it's a piece of glass in between. I think that's how they did it.
Really?
I think that's how they did it, yeah. Huh. And when Harrison Ford drops into the snake pit in Raiders Lost Ark, you can see the reflection of the glass in between.
Really?
And then when they remastered it, they got rid of the glass, so they got rid of a bit of the character. Because I like mistakes being left in,
Yeah. That Oh yes, that's really interesting. It's interesting because a lot of people say to me, like, "Yeah, they didn't really put a plastic bag over your head, did they? Like, there were places that you could breathe." And I go,
Yeah.
no, there weren't. We tried it by
Wow.
putting holes in, but you could see the bag move if I took a breath. So,
Yeah.
I mean, putting the holes in your mouth or your nose wasn't working. So I said to them, let's just go for it. And on it went. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, I don't know why my phone just went off. Um, but I said, let's just wing it. I mean, that's why you hired me, because I can hold my breath for a long time. I look at the film now and I'm surprised how long I can keep my eyes still open and not breathe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but
That's
no
fascinating.
trick.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
No
That was
trick.
like a strong tick box for being able to hold your breath.
Yeah, I guess it's on my special skills on
Yeah,
my
it's
resume.
one of your
Yeah.
superpowers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Now the thing
What?
is, they did have to spray the bag with catnip to get the cat to come up and sit on me, because that cat didn't want to
Wow.
do anything. Bob kept throwing it at me, and that cat would land sort of halfway down my legs and just kind of fall down with the claws
Yeah.
out. So they eventually sprayed the bag with catnip, and Claude came up and did his thing, or
Yeah.
her thing,
Wow.
or whatever Claude was,
It is.
the diva cat.
So something I wanted to ask you about Black Christmas was, it wasn't necessarily about the production of the film, and I think being able to, holding your breath is a great story. It's more about reflecting on it through other people's eyes. What's that feeling like when you've been in something like that, and you get people asking you questions about it? What's it like? Because obviously, John Carpenter, I was listening to a commentary of his on Escape from New York, and he's talking about it's obviously really difficult to separate yourself from the art, because you are the person creating it or being part of it. So what's it like when reflecting on the film, and especially with S.I.C. and people that are going to be there that love the film? What's that like for you?
Uh, well, I really love doing the convention circuit and meeting the fans. There are, I mean, the only thing that I'm as passionate about as they are passionate about horror film is probably theater. And
Yeah.
probably it's not even the same, because the fans are so overwhelmed, and they just are so complimentary, and they have so many interesting questions. And I mean, I'm kind of amazed, because at the time, shooting it, you never know that it's going to have this kind of longevity at all. And
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was sort of exciting when Bob Clark told me my picture would be on the poster, but little did I know, here we are next year, 50 years later, it's the 50th anniversary,
Wow.
uh,
It's
next year
incredible.
of Black Christmas, 50 years later, that people are flocking to try and meet me and get a picture, get a poster, have it signed. I mean, I find that extraordinarily flattering, and kind of gobsmacking, because you don't expect that to be um, something that you did 50 years ago. You don't expect it to be even more sort of even more above the radar, or in the radar, whatever you say,
Yeah.
as
It's
it was even
finally it's
yeah.
finally appearing on the radar more consistently. And when I first
Yes,
watched it, I was like,
absolutely.
this is sorely underappreciated in some quarters.
Hmm.
And I think that it has that really nice kind of 70s vibe to it. I was
Yeah.
born in 82, so there was some films in 82 that I kind of love, and every time it's my birthday I watch just films from 1982. But something like Black Christmas, it's
Yeah.
the love you
Yeah.
and like
Right
the
in there.
amazing thing is it's like a generational thing as well. You get more new fans every single time. It's not just one generation of fans, which is incredible.
No, it's been incredible, and even with the other two um, newer versions of Black Christmas, I find people are still coming back to this one and declaring it their favorite one.
Yeah,
Um, just whatever it is, the feel of that film, I think was, um, I guess really sort of it was started a zeitgeist of interest in horror films, and particularly interesting with John Carpenter. Um, that people tell me, like, well, of course he was influenced by it. It's Quentin Tarantino's favorite film, Christmas film. It was also Elvis's and Steve
which is
Martin's. What that's
full circle in some ways for
It's
you, isn't it?
crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And when I moved to LA, which I lived in LA for 12 years, I actually bought John Carpenter's house. So I lived in John Carpenter and Adrienne Barbeau's house for 12 years.
Wow.
I was very close to them because I was close to Tommy Lee Wallace too, and Nancy Loomis, who was in Halloween. So we were all very connected,
Yeah.
and not
John's
because of
my
horror films, but just
yeah. John's my favorite horror filmmaker. I've literally got a signed tour poster in 2016 when he was in Manchester, which isn't far from here, because his
oh,
music is so iconic. I'd say it's getting to the point where his music's
oh,
just as iconic as his films.
yeah.
And
Oh, you
his and
mentioned
Adrian,
Manchester. My mom,
yeah.
my mom grew up on Anfield Road, across from the football pitch for Man United. That's how she met my dad. He was a soccer player.
Wow, that's
Wheels
incredible.
within wheels. Just that was a very long and detour segue
Yeah,
out of that conversation. But the wheels within wheels that revolve in your life, and you go, I mean, yeah, I just feel like John Carpenter was so much a part of my life. I don't know that I ever really met him. I met Adrian, but I don't think they ever came over to the house after having sold it.
yeah.
That
Yeah, their son. What I was saying, I think I had a connection issue, but their son is Cody Carpenter, and he's performed music
Yeah.
on the newest Halloween with his dad. He's uber talented. He looks just like him as well.
Oh.
But yeah, it's every time I do an interview like this, it always ends up talking about John Carpenter, because Joe Alves, who I
Well,
interviewed a couple of years ago, he was his production
yeah.
designer for Escape from New York and Starman. Um, but yeah, he's an incredible
My
filmmaker, and
ex-husband
yeah,
worked on Starman. So I guess I must have
wow,
met John Carpenter, because my
yeah,
ex-husband Stephen Poster was a DP, and he worked on Starman. So I did go on to that set. Yeah, well, how can you really talk about horror and not,
yeah,
certainly, over the last 20, 30, 40 years, and not mention John Carpenter? Can't,
exactly, yeah.
can't. You
Can
know?
I ask you, what was it? Were you directed directly by Rick Moranis in Strange Brew? And
Yes,
what was that
Doug.
like?
Yes. Well, the hardest thing for me was trying to keep a straight face,
I
because
can only
they
imagine. Yeah,
co-directed. They co-directed, and and Steve Poster, who was my husband at the time, was the DP. It is crazy, crazy,
well, that
crazy.
must have been crazy, because you've got him behind the camera, you got Rick,
Yeah,
the other director.
yeah, yeah. Rick and Dave, right there. Yeah, telling what, and they are, they are genius at improv, and so
Yeah,
much of it was, I mean, so much of it was scripted, but a lot of it came out of the situation in the moment, and an improv situation, and they'd say, oh, I know what you should say now. You should say, I can't believe he drank the whole thing. Or they'd come up with that on the moment, like they'd say, oh, um Yeah, this is good. This is good. Like maybe we can have Lynn pick Rick up and somebody will be underneath, but it'll look like she's carrying him. That'll be funny. Like that was what it was
Amazing.
like. It was like a hoot and a holler.
It
Yeah,
must have been
yeah.
like at the end of the day, because of the three people you were working with and one you were in a relationship with. The end of the day must have been
Yeah.
exhausting. Do you know what I mean? Because you're so much input, you're trying to listen to everyone as well.
Yeah, but I they were also they treated me a bit like a princess too. So I never complained. I mean, I think I complained at one point of having to say a line that I didn't think was very Pamish. That and it was funny because when they kept telling me it was based on Hamlet, and I said I've done like 3 productions of Hamlet as a play. No,
Yeah.
I'm playing Pamlet. That's, um, but they
Yeah.
treated me really sweetly, and it's so funny when we did a convention just before the pandemic, and Dave was there, and we did a Q&A, and he told me that originally they wanted Demi Moore for the part, but then they had to they had the law laid down that they had to have enough Canadian content, and so lucky me, I
Yeah.
was the Canadian content in that regard to casting, which was great. Lucky me.
That's amazing
I
because
didn't,
the
I didn't know
cast
that
is
story
incredible.
until a little while ago. Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
amazing to find that out. So long after, it's incredible, isn't it?
I know. And I said, well, I don't, she has had a good career.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me at least that little morsel. Because, you haven't suffered too much, have you, Demi?
Yeah.
No. Well, maybe with Ashton Kutcher, but that's not my
Yeah.
business. I'll keep my
Did you
nose out of that one.
did you get to spend any time chatting with, is it Max Von Sydow during the film, or
Oh, my God, Uncle
because
Max.
obviously in terms of an
Uncle
icon,
Max.
yeah,
He's like, he was so personable. He would always join us in the lunchroom and sit down and chat about Ingmar Bergman and whatever movie questions we had about his work. And there's a funny story that Dave tells, that when they were having a production meeting and someone was saying, well, who do you think should play Dr. Smith or Professor Smith or whatever he's called? And he went, wow, wouldn't it be great? What if we got Max von Sydow? And I guess everyone in the room went, Dave, yeah, right. Like, why don't you just call him up and ask him? So evidently Dave did get, through his agent or somewhere, a phone
yeah,
number, which he called, and lo and behold, Max answered the phone. And so Dave does his pitch, his spiel, and Max is going, well, maybe I can consider, I don't know, Canada, I don't know. Anyway, evidently Max hangs up the phone, and his kids say to him, who was that? And he said, oh, the crazy Canadians, Bob and Doug Mackenzie from Canada. And the kids said, oh, you have to do that movie, Dad. That movie, those 2 guys are so funny. So, hence, Max signs on to do Strange Brew because his kids wanted him to.
wow, wow. I heard a similar story from Frank Langella. Or is it Langella? I can't always get it wrong,
I
but
say
it was
Jello, Franklin
he
Jello.
his kids persuaded him to do Masters of the Universe. So I thought, right, I'll do this one for kids,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's an iconic. It's
I
an
know.
iconic. It's one of those things, isn't it?
It goes to show
But
you always listen to what your kids have good taste.
yeah, have you
Not
seen?
always, maybe.
I can't remember the title of the film, but have you seen? I think it's a 2002 film with Max von Sydow about stealing luck. Have you seen that, where
Mm.
by taking a photograph of someone you can steal all their luck?
Oh yes, 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 yes. I have seen it.
Um,
Yes,
but yeah,
yeah.
that's fantastic. You got to kind of spend
And
time with him, and
I got to be, I got to be, what is that kind of a fireman's carry when you're fire held like
over the
that, like
shoulder.
in
Yeah,
Mac. No, because I was just in his arms like that. So I wasn't fireman's carry. I was like a baby in arms, and I was going. The career is never going to get better than this, than being carried by Max Von Sydow. It's never going to get
Yeah,
better. Maybe something else will come up, but that's
absolutely.
pretty much a highlight. Yeah.
Something I thought would be probably important. I don't want to go too. I don't want to go too serious. I never want to go too serious.
Oh
But
yeah, that's just for a minute.
what what advice would you give to an actor or an actress that it's difficult to say because it's on hindsight you kind of reflect on it, you can ask this question, answer it a bit more straightforward. But when when you're in horror and there's that obviously that iconic that you can be in something that's huge and throughout your career you've got some fantastic highlights. What advice would you give to a young performer now that obviously so much is kind of potentially given to an actor? What advice would you give to someone that's kind of starting out?
Oh, but are they starting out they want to be film actors?
Yeah,
Or
film actors, or even like from your point of view, from translate. Yeah, that's actually
yeah,
probably a two-part question from
yeah, because
translating
I
from the
think they should
stage to
study.
screen.
They need to. They sort of need to learn sort of the basics. I mean, I know now there's a lot of um, young actors who are immediately catapulted to fame, huge fame. Some of them handle it very well, and a lot of them don't handle it very well. I think trying to ground yourself in study first. There's lots of really great things to read. There is a ton of stuff you can watch. Watching film is, and learning to watch with the mind to literally like clocking what performers are doing very specifically in front of a camera, specifically in close ups. And a lot of it is observation. I certainly, for me, I was like a sponge when I was younger. I was like at Stratford, I was getting to work with people like Ian Richardson and Carol Shelley, Paxton Whitehead, really Brian Bedford, like people that just by watching you could learn a tremendous amount. And I was playing smaller parts, but so I would actually show up in all the rehearsals. I mean, I was in a King Lear with Doug Rain, who plays Hal in 2001 A Space Odyssey. I mean, those people, you just have to observe how they work and how though actors who are trained in theater are pretty detailed. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of work on, the background of the character and really taking apart the script and really understanding the meaning of everything and not just your role, but the whole arc of whatever the story is being told. There's just, I think the main thing I would say to them is don't think you can just walk through the open door. You have to have something in your pocket to show them that you have, obviously the ambition, but also the technique and the mindset to know that this is what you really want to do. It's not just for a lark or just for wouldn't it be cool to be famous for a while because I was on some teenage sitcom or something? Those people tend to end up burning out, and the
Yeah,
business can kind of eat them up. Sad.
that's great advice. That
Yeah,
really is. And surrounding
yeah,
yourself with people you can trust. It's difficult, isn't it?
yeah. And I mean, it's a very, very competitive business. It's a very disappointing business. You can go out for sometimes 20, 30, 50 auditions and not land anything. And then,
Yeah,
but you have to keep saying, I always say the audition room is like walking into a big glove. And you walk into that room and you either fit that glove or you don't. They usually make their decision about you within the first minute or two of your walking into the room, whether you're right for the part. So even though you may read brilliantly, if you don't look like what they want, or if you look too much like their ex-wife, then you're in trouble. You know what I mean? They're not going to
Yeah.
hire you.
That's
Oh
so
yeah.
true.
Oh yeah.
In
I've
every
been
walk
told
of
that.
life,
Oh
that's
no,
so
you
true.
didn't get the
Yeah.
part because you look too much like his ex-wife. They're not getting along at the moment. But yeah,
That's
that there is that. Of course, there's an enormous amount of luck and opportunity um, involved. I think, you know, that's what luck is. It's being prepared for the opportunity when it presents itself to you, to be able to take
absolutely.
advantage of it and be ready. Um, you know, not kind of disappoint those that hired you and disappoint yourself more than anything else if you're not fully prepared to be line word perfect, to study, to do anything you can do in terms of if you're cast in a film, watch the filmmakers' films. I just did an Adam McGoyan film, the famous Canadian filmmaker, and before I started on the project, I watched all of his films, and it was really informative to see the way he works and clearly how he works with actors. You can see that he's really, really good with actors because the consistency of the performances all the way down even to some of the smaller roles
Yeah.
is very, very good, very high quality. And then when I worked with him, it was like, yes, I know exactly how you work now. And it was just like, yes, there it is, the hand in the glove again.
Exactly.
It was
It's like
delightful.
with that kind of a collaboration, it's that you can see there's a huge amount of respect for everyone at every level on the call
Yes,
sheet.
yes,
And that's,
absolutely.
yeah,
And you have to understand too, when you get cast, you have been cast for a very good reason because they think you can do it.
yeah,
And some people
exactly.
go, oh, you know, oh, oh, it's so good to get the part, but oh, now I've got the part. Now what do I do? But
Yeah,
you're cast because they really believe in you, and if they've hired you, they believe in you. So believe in yourself. Uh,
absolutely.
Funnily enough, I just did another movie called Priscilla, where I worked with
I was going to
Sofia
ask you about that.
Coppola,
Yeah, yeah,
and Sophia is exactly the opposite. Sophia is like a painter. So I hardly had any conversation with her at all. In fact, what she does is when she gets on the set with her DP and her art directors and all of her stand ins, she creates and puts the picture together. Then, as the principal actor, you're brought in when she's ready to shoot. So she doesn't give you really direction because I guess she's hired you because this is what I tell myself. She's hired you because she likes what you're doing and what you're doing is right and it's on the money. If she didn't like it, she would say, no, that's not right. But if it's all humming along smoothly and the pictures are being painted and created the way she wants them, then she doesn't have to speak a lot. She
yeah.
was
It's
all,
probably
I mean, I don't think I really even saw much of her during the filming.
there's probably a lot of preparation
So
that goes
yeah,
into that.
different
Yeah,
with
yeah.
everybody. And just again, I go, I was really prepared. I had studied everything I could about Elvis's grandmother, down to what kind of glasses she wore and how she talked, and learning with a dialect coach how to talk like her. And, you know, that was all my pre production work before I got in front of the cameras.
Well, that's fantastic,
So,
Lynn.
yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah,
It's and
yeah,
hopefully it'll get because I think that there's a slight delay with all kind of the actors strikes and everything. I think there's a delay in its release
yeah.
possibly. And yeah,
Yes,
I'm
I
really
think it's
looking
now
forward
not
to seeing it. Yeah,
till November, I think. But it did so well at the Venice Film Festival, and my big hugs and kudos go out to Kaylee Spaney, who won Best Actress over all those other actresses like Jessica Chastain and Nicole Kidman and
yeah,
Carrie Mulligan. I mean, Kaylee and Kaylee was. I thought watching her work on set, she was like seamless. She was living it. She was in it, and so was Jacob. So they were amazing, the two of them together to watch.
Isn't it amazing
work,
when you see someone's performance, and even if you've seen them before, like one of the best performances I've seen recently was Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer, because I'm so used to seeing him
I haven't seen Oppenheimer.
His performance,
Peaky Blinders.
It's exactly, because you think of the Birmingham accent, and when I watched that film, I was watching Oppenheimer. You know, the character. It's a transformative performance, and for a film to have such scale, and then it's all about, like you're saying, it's all about the close-ups, and for me, it's one of, I think, possibly Nolan's best film because of what he does on screen, and it's fascinating to hear that how different directors work, and that's what I was going to ask you about with Sofia. What that was like. It was really fascinating to see, because of because you've worked on The Boys as well, and it's really fascinating to know how directors work and how vastly different they can be.
They are vastly different. And I always think that the ones who are really tyrannical or totalitarian, I don't think they get the best performances, because the minute you sort of are told what to do and not, one of the things that happened with Adam McGoyan was we were shooting a scene where he wanted it to be quite cold and non-reactive. And we'd maybe done it 4 or 5 times, and then he looked at me and he said, "You have something else you want to give, don't you? You have something. Let's do it again." And so we did it again. And when I got to the moment where he wanted me to be really cold, I started to cry and break apart. And I couldn't continue, and I sort of ad-libbed a line. That's in the film. I just saw the film. It's in the film, because he said, I don't generally go for that kind of sentimentality of a mother breaking down, and saying that she's hurt her child. And I went, no, I know, I hate sentimentality, but it's what happened at that moment that I had built up so much with working with Amanda Siegfried, and I felt something break during the take.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
That's the one they used in the film, which is, that's luck of the draw, and, magic moments that happen. Sometimes mistakes make magic moments in film.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think some of there's probably, after we finish in a moment, I could probably think of a million of them. Like, I'll tell you a funny story rather than a magic moment. There's obviously you've seen Casablanca, right?
Oh, maybe only like 60 times.
Yeah, I think we've watched it about the same amount of times. Yeah, I absolutely
then Sunset
adore the
Boulevard's
film.
up there too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But anyway, Casablanca.
Yeah, Claude Rains was being given direction by Richard Curtis, isn't it? Not Richard Curtis, Michael Cort. Oh, I can't remember the director's name. I forget. Cortez. Yeah,
Cortez.
He was getting direction, giving direction to Claude Rains about. And it was the scene towards the end where they're setting up, grabbing the guy and finding out where the letters of transit are. And he was saying to Claude Rains, "You're not coming in fast enough into the door, Claude. You need to be quicker. And Claude Rains is, a well-established actor, even at that point.
Oh, yes.
And an icon in many ways. And he said, "Okay, am I not quick enough? Okay, we'll do one more take. Just give me a moment." His action, and he cycled in on a little bicycle. So is that quick enough? Is that quick enough? But apparently they had a great relationship after that, and it's interesting how.
Oh yeah.
And like I'll tell you one where relationships can be made or broken based on little mistakes, and that's a great example. I worked on a film in 2007 called Butterfly on a Wheel. It was a Pierce Brosnan, it was Gerald Butler and Maria Bello, but I worked on the post-production as a runner. And Mike Barker ends up directing a lot of the episodes of Handmaid's Tale, the director of the film.
Oh.
And on the first day, and obviously as a runner, getting the teas and coffees and the snacks and all that for the director and editor, So it was a great experience. And there's a guy sat on the couch, and it was the first guy, apart from the assistant editor, that I'd met. Hadn't met the director yet. I said, "Oh, have you seen the film yet, Alex?" Really well spoken, had a cravat, and I thought, obviously, he's someone important, you know. And at that point, I hadn't said, "No, I'm going to watch it with the assistant editor later." I watched the film, but I missed the last 10 minutes because I had to move on to something else. And then I saw this guy again with the cravat and his coffee and all of that. Really well spoken, thick, kind of London accent. And he was, "What did you think of the film?" And I said, "Yeah, it was good. It was okay." I was like the worst. And he said, "Okay? What do you mean, okay?" And then he stormed off, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. This is gonna be a disaster." And I spoke to the assistant editor. I said, "Who was that?" I said, "That's the writer and one of the producers of the film." It's his first. He'd worked in TV for 20 years, and it was his first feature film he'd written. And I was like, "Oh my God, disaster! I'm gonna get thrown out the window." I watched the last 10-15 minutes. Massive twist, great twist. And I thought, "Oh, this is great." And I was like, "Oh my God, I look like such an idiot." But then when he came back and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. The film was great." He says, bullshit. And he was just swearing. But then we both broke into laughter. And it was just a great working relationship, you know, so you can have those moments where
absolutely where
really are quite special.
You put your foot right in it.
Exactly, yeah.
But you know, I mean, it brings up in my mind how film, television, theater, any of these art forms have to be collaborative. It's not like being a visual artist or a painter or a writer where it's you and the pen or you and the brush, you and the canvas. Those arts are collaborative and only really work best when they are collaborative. And if you have someone who makes you feel that your input is valuable and as important as anything else, that they might want to even override you, but they have a reason to discuss it with you so that you feel like you're sharing a common goal. I mean, a lot of the times you can be called a real diva for saying, I don't think this line works. I think it should be more like, and people are going, whoa, you shouldn't say anything like that. You shouldn't step out. But in a way you go, you have to assume that the director is probably more nervous about how this is going to turn out than you are. And more, it's on his shoulders or her shoulders. They are responsible for the whole thing. But you can say to them, I just really want to be collaborative in this process. And that makes things so much better. It's like with this guy, to break the ice that way that you did with him, you know?
Yeah, I know. I was kind of, I sense this from you, but when you go into a business or you go into a coffee shop and you see someone mopping the floor, I respect them as much as anyone within that business, anyone within the industry that way, you know.
Absolutely.
And I was so lucky because I know of stories from other people that are within the industry that working in a similar position where they don't have that. And then it was a little bit of a joke between the editor and director, and they've worked on huge productions, and it was a great working relationship. And even like with, you know, just to kind of bring it full circle, you know, it was a new family for me for, you know, 6 months.
Yeah.
And then it was just an incredible story, you know. So I want to thank you, Lynne, for,
you know, those people that do, you know, clean up your trailer afterwards and walk you to your car and make sure you're safe. I mean, everybody. I mean, I love crews. I love film crews. I generally hang out, you know, when we're sitting on set waiting hour after hour. You know, I'll hang out with some of the crew rather than maybe some of the actors. You know, you get to, you know, the actors,
great
but
stories.
Some of those
I bet,
crew people are so devoted. You know.
Yeah.
And so. I mean, that's what I mean. It's a huge kind of network of people, and you have to appreciate who's doing your hair, who's doing your makeup, who's doing, and they're working as hard as, and I've worked with a couple of who will shall remain nameless stars that have been really, really obnoxious to the lower staff, or who they consider their servile people around them. They can be very, very rude and just really uncaring and cruel to them and demanding. It's just not right. It's just, no matter how big a star you should be, you got to really kind of think that some of the most impressive people that I've worked with, Meryl Streep is one, that we were shooting a film. I was just the receptionist behind the desk. It was a Disease of the Week movie, and I had been sitting behind the desk for hours and hours and hours while they shot this scene because it involved a sick child. And at one point, the craft service came by with a tray full of smoothies and, of course, walked right by me. I'm like a supernumerary, right? And Meryl looked over and she said, "Oh, my God, you've been sitting behind that desk for hours. I bet you would really like a smoothie, wouldn't you? I'm going to go and get you one." And she did.
Wow. So that's
and we were in a hospital, a real hospital, and she was signing all the patients' casts. Whoever came up to her or wanted a signature, she would sign their cast. Like broken legs and broken arms. It was brilliant.
That's
just
great.
Brilliant,
That's really great. There was
Before we go, I have to tell you too, Alexander, that in November I am shooting the sequel to Black Christmas with Olivia. There is a movie that half of it has been made called It's Me, Billy. You can find it online. You can Google it, by two filmmakers named Dave McRae and Bruce Dale. And when they decided that they wanted to kind of expand, they've already shot the first half of it, but they wanted to turn it into a full-length feature, or at least 2 parts of a Black Christmas sequel. They asked me if I'd be in it, and I said, "I don't know how I can be. I'm dead. Claire is dead." But then they said, "Oh, no, we've written a part for you. You're her sister. You are a private detective who's trying to get to the bottom of your sister's murder." And then so I read the script, and I said, "It's really good, but you've written the part of Jess. Like, who are you going to play? Who's going to play Jess?" And they said, "Well, I don't know. We'll put out a breakdown, and we'll try and find somebody." And I said, "Well, look, Olivia is a friend of mine on Facebook. I can send her, just a little blurb about it and say, we're trying to fundraise for this thing, and see if she has any interest." Anyway, long story short, they got a script to her. She read it. She signed an LOI right away, and she's coming at the end of November, and we are shooting the sequel. And it will be the solution to the mystery of the murders in Black Christmas.
That's amazing.
Don't tell anyone. Anyway, I wanted to get that in.
Thank you so much. And one little last thing: are you kind of jazzed and looking forward to S.I.C.K?
Oh, S.I.C.K, yes, and. I mean, you're pals with Doug, right? Doug has been just brilliant. We had a great meeting, and he's working so very hard. The only time I went to Sudbury once to film something, and I think I said this is a long time ago, because isn't it one that I think it has a big nickel, is a very giant nickel, is their, I don't know, their slogan for the city. Anyway, but I was kind of driving by, and I said, this would be a place where you'd go to die, and you'd be in an Ibsen festival for life. And also, the best meal I ever had in Sudbury during that time was at the bowling alley. I'm sure it's improved since then. I'm really looking forward to it. There seems to be so much, they are working so much harder and so diligently on all the details. It's been brilliant. I mean, most of the time I sign on to something and I say, "Yeah, I'll be there," and I bring all my own stuff. Oh, I have to show you too before we go, because this is my, my stuff that I make. Black Christmas.
Oh, that's awesome.
And now Doug has requested curtains ornaments that I
That's
autograph
great.
and that people can buy and hang on their Christmas tree. This has been a little
That's
cottage
awesome.
industry I've had for quite a long time, and it's certainly supplemented my old age and paying off my mortgage.
Absolutely. But thank you, Lynn. I really do appreciate it, and I'll
Thank
let you know through
you.
email when the episode comes out. And please thank Sean for. I know it was a job back in the day with Back to the Future 3, but the magic of those films and even having a small part to a big part is a big
Oh
thing for
yeah,
me. So please
yeah,
thank him for
and
that.
still like between that and Wayne's World, it's a really
Yeah,
nice residual check.
yeah. And did you,
So yeah,
and
I
and
will.
that story you
Thank you.
told me about the 2001 residual checks. That's
Oh yeah,
hilarious. That's hilarious.
yeah, yeah,
I've got a
yeah.
friend of mine
Just sign
who,
them. Nobody knows.
yeah, I've got a friend of mine
Yeah,
who
the ones
works
he
in,
gets for Back to
yeah,
the Future and for Wayne's World are a lot bigger than that. Sometimes four
yeah,
figures. So we owe them a lot.
yeah. There's a few of my friends that are huge 2001 fans, and they've gone on to work on television and film, and they'll love that story when they hear it. But yeah, um,
Yeah.
but
Maybe
thank you,
the
Lynn.
next one I'll just, if there's a next one, I'll just keep it and I'll save it for you, Alexander, and you can have it. It'll probably be for like maybe like $1.05 or something like
Oh,
that. Nothing that would
if you
even
did
convert
that, that'd
well.
be great. I'd love that.
It will be worth a shilling, maybe.
Absolutely, yeah. But thank you, Lynn. Thank you for being on the
Thank
Creative
you.
Connection, and have a
Thank you.
fantastic time at S.I.C., and I
I
look forward to
will.
seeing
I
Priscilla
will.
as
And
well.
everybody come out. It's September, what, 29th, 30th, and October 1st in Sudbury, Ontario. I do the little pitch for Doug's sake. Come on out. There's going to be lots and lots of fun. We're going to watch the movie Curtains, I think, from beginning to end.
Yeah,
And no spoilers from me as to who was the bad guy.
yeah. But thank you, and have a great evening into
Thank
your
you, you
evening. Yeah.
too.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.